Hey, all fans of the Improve Yourself channel. Welcome to the second video in our series of how average guys improve themselves. Hope you guys listened to the first video. The first video was just basically kind of a synopsis of what the goals of this channel is. As we start going forward, it's going to be a little um, less structured and a little bit more relaxed, and hopefully a little bit more fun as we go forward. My second guest is the same as the first. I have my brother here, Malcolm. How you doing today?
Good, man. How are you? I'm excited to be back.
Yeah. So the first week, we're actually having a show pretty quickly because I just wanted to get some more content out there. So it's only been a couple days since the first show. But has anything positive or negative happened to you that you want to share?
Oh, that's a great question. I don't know. It's been kind of a quiet couple of days around here. We've been I've got two kids. I know you talked on your channel. You have a few kids of your own. So we're just this is our last day of being home. So the kids have been running wild, playing over their winter break. They got the neighbors. Our neighbor kids came over today and are keeping them entertaining. So that's been positive. Been positive social time for my kids, just to hang out with some other kids and have fun and open up all their new Christmas stuff. I don't think anything negative. I think everything's been pretty positive so far. How about you?
I guess basically the reason why I spurred on that question is, with all the New Year's resolutions and um, things that we're trying to do to improve ourselves, right away, I got dealt a card as far as a test, um,
Okay.
and got in a little bit of an argument with the spouse a couple nights ago.
Okay. Okay. Do we want to unpack it a little bit?
Well, yeah. So basically, I think one of those self-identified weaknesses that I've had throughout my life is a temper. Now, I wouldn't say my temper has ever gotten violent where I've hurt someone, especially in my adult life, but I do get angry to a point of yelling and intense frustration, and I've
Yeah.
battled with that most of my life, and even on little things, little small things that shouldn't make one so angry. And I think almost that I deal with bigger things, the things that should make you angry, a lot better than the little things,
Yep.
believe it or not. So,
I've had just real briefly, I've had that same thought about our dad all the time growing up.
mhm,
I felt like our dad was the exact same way. Where I remember there was an incident where I wrecked my car, and he handled that perfectly. Right? Was calm, was cool, collected, no big deal. And then I leave the house door unlocked when I run down the street for 5 minutes, and he blows up. Right? So it's blowing up over the small things and handling the big things well seems to be maybe a Jason family trait.
sure, sure. So, and to unpack this a little further, I think when things are rushed, when things are moving quickly, and you feel like you have to rush, I feel like that also adds into the possible anger that you could have. Always, I've heard from multiple, self-help people, as we unpack this for us average people, they've always said to deal with your anger, the best thing is to slow down. And usually, when I have issues, is situations where I feel like I can't slow down. Do you understand where I'm coming from?
Yeah, absolutely.
So basically, the situation was simply I had something that needed to be picked up. It was getting later at night, and it was a free item that there was some urgency in getting it picked up because it wouldn't be free anymore if it didn't get picked up. And my wife was picking it up, and it wasn't out yet, and she didn't want to wait for it to be put out, so she said she was going to pick it up later. I told her to wait, yada yada, and things just kind of evolved from there. I won't go into specifics, but just the example of a little thing leading to a big thing, and in time and rushing and not being able to breathe being a component of the
Yeah,
anger and the fuel of that anger.
yeah, absolutely. That feeling of pressure, right? The time putting pressure on you. I totally can relate to that. Yeah. So a little bit of a hurdle to overcome in your first few days of the new year here. A little
Yeah.
bit of a test.
hmm Yeah, and one of the things is that I thought about it like in the next day. My initial thought after I had the anger issue where I didn't feel like much of a husband, I didn't feel like much of a dad because I had the anger. I was like, well, who am I to have a self help podcast? I should just shut this down. I should just quit, right? But
Yeah.
then eventually, and this is why I kind of rushed getting into the next video so soon, is I was like, this is exactly what the goals of this channel is. People that are still having problems talking about
Yeah.
their strategies to handle the problems that they're having.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We're not self-improvement people that are self-improved. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
We're flawed humans. And I think that that's part of hopefully the appeal, right, of this channel is that we don't have it all figured out. You certainly, you don't, I don't, I think most people don't, but we're also not pretending that we do.
Right. Now,
Yeah.
to go from that, definitely don't think with either one of us, both of us would. There are people that would aspire to be like us, right?
Sure.
Definitely, we both have our things that we have been successful at self improvement, and so with that being said, I don't want to brag on myself, but I used to weigh over 200 pounds, and I've lost a lot of weight. I
Yeah.
used to be depressed, and I found a way to not be depressed. And most people that know me consider me one of the most dedicated, best fathers they know. So it's not like we're bums either that don't know how to improve
Right.
ourselves either. So we're very average, and I think or semi great is another thing I put in my
Yeah.
podcast.
Sure.
We are great people, but we're definitely not professionals in this. So, and I think there's some value in that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that um, there's a fine line to walk and a balance that has to be struck between being honest about your shortcomings, right, and like recognizing areas for growth without putting yourself down and engaging in like negative self-talk. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because that can go too far the other direction where you just you spend your whole day thinking about how you're not good and how you're awful and a bad person, and that self-talk then reflects itself in how you engage with the world around you.
Okay.
So there's a balance to be struck there, you know what I mean? But I think we're trying to find that balance of like, okay, how can we improve without feeling bad about ourselves? How do we find areas for that improvement?
For sure. Now, once we get super popular, Malcolm, if that ever happens, this is where we would have a commercial break and advertise a product. And there's a bunch of products that I use that I wouldn't mind advertising. So if you find out that I'm using those, call me up. I'll take your sponsorship. All right,
but talk about one. You should just talk about one real quick as like an unsponsored ad, and then maybe they'll hear it and they'll be like, okay, we'll sponsor you now.
All right, I'll pick one. Let me see. Apple Fitness. Apple Fitness I've been using for the last year or so, and I feel like it's something that I can get in a quick workout and feel good about myself, and it builds strength in ways that I can use it as a father. So give it a try. Usually they have a trial period, and Apple Fitness, if you're out there, I'm a faithful user. I paid for you. Maybe you can give me a free month or something for our 7 subscribers that might hear this.
Yeah, exactly. It'll be worth it. Come on, Apple.
Yeah, give me a free month. I mean, it's
Apple wouldn't even notice if they sent you a year subscription. They wouldn't even notice the bottom line. Come on, Apple.
Yeah. Let's get a free subscription to Apple, and then we'll go from there. We'll go from there.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So after our commercial break, there we're gonna still have some sort of structure in these videos. And our word of the day, Malcolm. You're going to have to respond to another word of the day. Are you ready?
I'm ready. I was ready for that. I didn't know what the word would be, but I remembered that structure, so I'm ready to respond.
So the word today is dedicated.
Ooh, dedicated. All right, dedicated. You want my initial response to dedicated?
Yeah, I want to hear your response first, and then I'll kind of play off your response. That's usually how I like to format this show, just for future. Time out real quick before we go into dedicated, because I am dedicated to the show. I am going to have other celebrity, I kind of joke about that, guests other than my brother. I just kind of want to get some of the quirks out of the show first, before I start bringing in all the celebrities.
Well, and he knows, and we know that I'm always available. I got a pretty loose. I have a pretty flexible schedule with my job, which is nice. So my availability might be higher than some other celebrities. So if you're ever in a pinch, you know who the celebrity will be on the show.
Yeah. All right. So what's your response to dedicated? What does that word make you feel? What's your initial response?
I think when I think of dedicated, I think of something that you are pursuing or doing in spite of obstacles. I guess the first thing I thought was that I don't know if it counts as dedication if you've never had an obstacle to overcome, right? So when we say, for example, in relationships, when you talk about, your partner or your spouse or whoever, you are dedicated to that person because what that means is that I'm not going to leave the second that there is a hard moment, right? That is what dedication is. If there's never a hard moment, then I don't know if I would even call that dedication, right? I wouldn't say that I am dedicated to, I don't know, breathing, right? Because I just do it. I take it for granted. It's not a labor for me, right? So I think when I first think of dedication, the first place my brain went was, in order for there to be dedication, there has to be an obstacle that you are willing to overcome to continue pursuing this thing, whether it's a fitness goal, whether it's a relationship goal, whatever it is. I think that dedication means obstacles. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's where my brain went. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, so one of the things that I was thinking about with these words is kind of unpacking them a little bit in as far as like the positive and negatives of the word.
Yeah.
Our first word was doubt, right? And initially, where your brain goes with doubt is it's kind of a negative word, right? But then you kind of brought some positive into it with your examples there with doubt, right? Well, the same thing can be true to dedicate, and that's kind of the reason why I picked this word. Everybody kind of knows the initial response to dedication or dedicate, being the word that we're using today. That yeah, you want to be a dedicated father, you want to be dedicated to your job. It's usually always used in a positive way.
Yes.
But what if you're dedicated to something that isn't good for you?
Yeah.
And I think as fathers, as mothers, and all walks of life, sometimes we're dedicated to things that aren't good for us, and kind of might be entrapping. So with that being said, uh, what I want as far as a self improvement thought about this word is actually choosing what we're going to be dedicated to, and choosing good positive things that we are dedicated to, that it's worth going over the obstacles that you explained. It's good to go over those obstacles, and we actually get something enriching and positive for our life.
Absolutely, because absolutely. Again, I'm jumping to relationships, and maybe just because that's what we kind of opened the podcast with, was thinking about. I'm not thinking about your marriage specifically, but just relationships in general, right? Where it's one of those things where you can be dedicated to a relationship that is bad for you, that is unhealthy, and you keep overcoming hurdles and obstacles, but on the other end of those obstacles, there's no positive, right? And so, absolutely, we can be dedicated to things that are not providing goodness to us. I think you can be, and I'm not talking about you, again, not you specifically, but I think I've seen people who I think were over dedicated to the gym, right?
Yep.
I've had a friend who was going to the gym 3 hours a day, and I saw it like affecting how he was doing his job, right? And I said, man, like, I get that you want to be in shape, but you know what I mean? Like you're pursuing this at the expense of other things, right?
Yeah. What's the benefit there? You talk about like elite marathon runners that run to a point where they ruin their knees.
Right.
The other things that are maybe the benefit doesn't outweigh the consequences as far as what they're dedicated to.
Well, and even on a day-to-day basis, I think about like there are things I want to do to make myself physically healthier, but I also want to live a life that I enjoy, right?
Yeah.
And so I drink a Dr. Pepper every now and then, and I know Dr. Pepper is not part of a if I was on a strict 24/7 nothing but perfect health metrics, Dr. Pepper would never make the cut, right? But I want to also enjoy my life. I'm trying to find a balance of I'm dedicated to this thing, right? But where's the balance? I guess there's a maybe what I'm trying to get at. I'm curious what you think of this, not to add another word. But is there a difference between dedication and obsession?
Yeah, there's a difference.
And what do you think it is?
Well, obsession for me is whenever you let something that you're doing cloud your thoughts even while you're trying to do something else. So you're almost like multitasking constant. So let's go back to my obsession with a video game, and they're going to get a free sponsorship on our show here too with our segment. So my obsession with Madden, right? When I was going out to dinner with my wife, right? I was still talking about it with you, with other people. I was, just thinking about the last great play I made. I was thinking about, all those things constantly while I was doing something else.
Yes.
Dedication, however, I think you could be dedicated with something but not be obsessive about it and still be able to facilitate the other parts of your life fairly.
Absolutely.
At least that's how I understand the word. But and that's another word I can add to my list. Maybe a few shows down the road, we'll unpack that word.
Yeah, no, I think that they're connected a little bit, but I like the distinction that you make that you can be dedicated to something without letting it take over other aspects of your life, right? Without letting it sort of seep into every sort of facet of what you're doing. Absolutely.
Right.
No, I think dedicated is definitely a good word, and it's a good word again when you think about resolutions. Are the resolutions that you made, are you dedicated to them, and are they going to make an improvement in your life? Are the things that you're dedicated to positive or negative, right?
Mm-hmm. I was listening to one of my self-help books. That's one of the resolutions I'm doing. I'm on the way to work and on the way back. I'm listening to some books to get some ideas, and also that'll help the show because I get some ideas from those things.
Sure.
And one of the ideas I kind of heard related to this is that people kind of think of freedom in the wrong way. Without structure, you have no freedom because without the structure that is kind of it gives you the ability to choose, right? So when you have the ability to choose what to eat, there's so much structure going into the fact that you even have that choice. When it comes down to being able to go to Taco Bell or McDonald's, there's so much structure necessary for that to even be an available choice for you. If there was no structure, then those two places couldn't even be a business, right? So with that being said, as far as like freedom, dedication to something can kind of take away in a lot of people's heads some freedom, right? You have to dedicate yourself to something. You're making that choice, but you're going to have to make that choice and give up something else, right? Especially if it's a big dedication. And that's why we were going in the first episode and we kind of talked about small resolutions because and that's why we unpacked this word dedication is positive and negative. I don't think it's a good idea to dedicate yourself to a resolution that might take you away from other good things in your life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So as I don't know if you've seen very many of my shorts, but one of the shorts I made today actually was about my 100 ab challenge thing where you do 100 sit-ups in 5 minutes, 100 different sit-ups. It's 5 minutes. And so it does require dedication to do it every day because it's 5 minutes that you're giving up that you would be doing elsewhere. But I think that's doable. It's not going to take away, hopefully, too much from your other things that you love. And if you just do that 5 minute, abdominal workout, maybe you'd see more benefits than what that 5 minutes otherwise would be worth to you.
Yep. But if you made a resolution that said, I'm going to be in the gym 5 hours a day,
that's
that's going to have negative impacts on all these other areas of your life, right? That is going to not be something that you can do without, again, finding a balance in your life. You know what I mean?
For sure.
I completely agree. One of the things, when you talked about structure, one of the things that somebody told me this once, and we were talking more about faith, but I think this applies to self-improvement too, is they said no one drifts toward righteousness. And in the same way, without a structure, nobody just drifts, I think, towards self-improvement, right? If you just wake up one day and you have no structure for the day, no goals or tasks to accomplish, you just wake up with a clear head and the blank day in front of you and no plans and no structure, I don't think that that is a template for self-improvement, right? Self-improvement comes with at least some level of structure and order, right? Um, and I thought that was a good way to put it, that when you're just drifting, very few people are able to just drift towards self-improvement. If you're drifting, that means you're probably drifting away from improving yourself.
Yeah. Yep. Totally agree.
Yeah. Um, which is hard for me too, by the way, because I don't know. We haven't really talked about this, even though we've known each other our whole lives, 30 plus years. I don't know if we've talked about this too much. But one thing I realized in the last year or two about myself is that I'm just a very, you've probably already known this about me, but like just accepting and embracing the fact that I am a type B person. I'm not a structure every minute of my day. I'm not a big planner, right? And so resolutions and self-improvement things are challenging for me because that's not my natural state. I know other people whose natural inclination is to be planners and organizers and structured. My natural inclination is not to be structured at all. And so I don't know where you fall on that spectrum of, do you feel like you naturally structure your life or you're naturally more unstructured? But I'm a very unstructured person. And so I'm trying to find ways to embrace that part of myself. Like I don't want to fight my nature so much that it's difficult every day. But within that, finding ways to include some structure, right? We've talked about like setting an alarm on my phone that goes off at the same time every day that says, hey, do this thing, right? Some reminders, things like that, things that help me as somebody who is not naturally inclined towards structure. I have to find ways to incorporate structure anyways, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Trying to unpack everything you put there is, I was going through my head as far as unpacking that because I think, in a way, you've identified like a personality trait
Yeah.
that is good in some ways, right? But you're trying.
Sure.
So for you, um, in order to do these things, you found that it's more difficult, and you might need more scaffolding or reinforcement
Yes.
to do that.
Absolutely.
So it's kind of like the example of one person who's an early riser that only needs to set one alarm versus the other person that needs to set 15 alarms. Well,
Yep.
if they both get to work at the same time, that's fine. But one person needed more intervention to get them,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, and there are pros and cons to these, right? Like that's the thing too is that I can recognize that being a type B person, the more laid back and relaxed person, that comes with cons, right? That it's harder for me to structure things. You know this. I'm often 5 or 10 minutes, maybe longer, late to things, right? Like it's just hard for me to be structured and put together. But at the same time, it has pros, right? I think one of the pros is that I'm very flexible. I have no problem changing my plans, right? Because I very often don't have plans, right? So somebody says, "Hey, do you want to do this in 20 minutes?" I'm like, yeah, I don't have anything going on, right? I don't. I'm flexible. So yeah, it comes with pros and cons, and it's ultimately. I think my point is that for a long time, I think I felt like I had to be a type A person, and I really fought my nature, and I tried to overstructure myself, and then I would get burnt out after a week or after a month, right? Because I was overstructured and it was just not natural. And so I'm trying to find ways that still are about self improvement, but that don't require me that require me to push myself without requiring me to change myself to a level where it's not sustainable.
Well, it's cool too because you just led me into maybe an application of one of my short quotes that I posted this last week, and
Yeah.
basically what it says is, in order to find out who you are or what you want in life, uh, instead of trying to chase after that thing, maybe you should just eliminate everything in your life that you don't want, that doesn't
Yeah.
benefit your life, isn't a positive thing in your life. And if you eliminate the things that aren't positive, that aren't you, you'll find yourself, because
Yeah.
that's what's left if you eliminate the things that aren't you. So cleaning up your life and being more focused on the things that you are and the things that are important to you uh, might help you find that in a
Well,
longer
and
explanation.
that is a segue into another, I mean, not a full topic, but just another thing that I think is important. And you sent me your list of resolutions, and some of these were on there. I think it's also important to remember for everybody listening, resolutions don't always have to be about adding things to your life. It can also be about subtracting negative things.
Right.
Sometimes a resolution is just, I'm not going to do this thing anymore, or I'm going to restrict how often I do this thing, right? And so, sometimes the best way to improve your life is not adding new things, but cutting some things out. Again,
sure.
and if we go back to dedication, are there things you're dedicated to that are not helping you advance your mental health, your emotional health, your self improvement? And maybe those things are things that can go.
Yep.
Absolutely.
All right. So the next segue is into obviously we're sports fans. So really, this weekend of football, a lot of people are taking the week off as they've solidified their playoff spot. One team that hasn't solidified their playoff spot and may not solidify one is your team. Tell me about the matchup this Saturday night.
I don't even think we mentioned this in the first episode. My beloved Indianapolis Colts. I've been a Colts fan ever since I was probably 7 or 8 years old, and I saw Peyton Manning slinging it around out there, and just became a massive Colts fan. That was also, I think, a few years where the Chiefs were down for a couple of years, and I just got hooked on the Colts. And so, yeah, big diehard Colts fan. Big game. They got the this is their only, believe it or not, I believe this is their only national primetime game. Or maybe they had one Thursday night game. They might have had one Thursday night game, but not a lot of national TV this year for the Colts. They're not a big draw. But Colts versus Texans, Saturday night, prime time. Winner is in the playoffs, and winner could win the division if the Jaguars lose on Sunday. So, big game. You and I have talked about this. I'm a big fan of Gardner Minshew. I think Gardner Minshew is a top 5 backup in the NFL, and he's gotten the Colts through. He's basically played all season. Got him knocking on the door of the playoffs. They just got to win on Saturday. The Texans are good. They're playing the Texans. C.J. Stroud is good. He's going to be an all-star someday. But man, I'm excited. I'm pumped for a primetime game when we get some special snacks just for the game. And I'm just it's the first Colts game maybe in a couple of years that I'm pumped for. So.
Well, and of course, since this is an Improve Yourself channel, I got to make a parallel with our sports talk, and I hope you knew this was coming. You ready for it?
I'm ready. Oh, I'm ready. Yeah, go ahead.
So, we're average people that are constantly trying to improve ourselves, and I don't know if we'll ever be great. But, in the sports world, and I think even in the resolution improvement world, I tell you what, I hear this from people all the time. There is this title or bust or great or bust idea with people in their resolutions. I have a friend at work that, thinks she needs to go to the gym for an hour and a half and boom, 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 and be like a Spartan person, right?
Yeah, have to do it perfectly.
But they're already in perfect health, and I'm like, you're great. Just make the small things happen. And so with that, it's funny. You got these two teams that are, the Colts and the Texans. They're relatively average, playing for a chance at a championship with probably the worst division in football. But it's a great thing, and I wonder how many Colts fans aren't appreciative of that. Like, whatever, they're not going to win a Super Bowl. This is just because that's how I remember so many Chiefs fans were like that whenever the Chiefs were winning titles, but they weren't really a contender. No one cared, and I wish they did. I wish there was some positivity about average wins. A little bit more positivity about it.
I wonder. I hope. If one of our 7 listeners is a Colts fan, man, I hope that this Saturday night, it would be a big deal if the Colts make the playoff. They were 4-12-1 last year. Mm-hmm. They were awful. They were terrible. And for that team to come back, honestly, and remind me of this. If the Colts lose Saturday night and I'm depressed about it, you remind me of this the next time I'm on a call. That going 9, even if they miss the playoffs and they go 9-8, mm-hmm. that's a 5-game improvement on where they were last year. Right. And that's without their starting quarterback. They drafted Anthony Richardson. He got hurt in week, I think, 4 or 5. So to go 9-8, even if they lose this Saturday, to go 9-8 with your backup quarterback, what a year. It's been a good year for the Colts. And I would say the same thing for the Texans. Nobody thought the Texans were going to be 9-8, even if they lose this Saturday and go 9-8, right? Nobody thought the Texans were going to go 9-8.
Mm-hmm.
What a great year! Yes, are we going to win a championship? No, and that's okay. That doesn't mean it was a bad year, right? It was still a successful season. So I'm excited for Saturday, but yes, keeping some perspective of like, improvement is good, right? Improvement is a step in the right direction, and be proud of that. You can be proud of improvement even if you don't get to the ultimate goal, right? You can still be proud of the improvement that you made.
Yeah, so let's look use me as an example, right? So I was a little out of shape at 210 pounds. I weigh a good 170 now, right? So I've lost about 40 pounds. But with that being said, whenever I was going through my weight loss, and I had done great things. You saw me like I ran a half marathon. Worked out every day, skipped a bunch of meals, did intermittent fasting, did all these great things, and nothing wrong with any of the things that I did. But there was a point where I kind of looked at my body, and I was like, meh. There's no six pack here. There's no big old, buff pecs or anything like that. And there's like this tendency for people to quit at that point because they're kind of realizing, I'm never going to be Arnold Schwarzenegger, so what's the point, right? There is a point. There is a point to even do the battles, the self improvement, just to stay the same, so you age slower. There's still a point for small improvement, even if it's not, even if you're not going to be the greatest. You're not going to be a big old buff person. I'm not going to be able to show off on Miami Beach and lift 60 pounds on Miami Beach with all the dudes when I go on the cruise. I'm going to look like an average white guy.
And and that absolutely. I mean, it's one of those things where and again, like I weigh more than that. I weigh, and it's also funny. It's all about your perspective too, right? Mm-hmm. For me, if I were to get to 210, which is where you started, right? If I were to get to 210, that would be a lot of improvement for me, right? Mm-hmm. And that doesn't mean I'm even at 210. That doesn't mean I'm at the weight I want to be, but I'm at 240 now, right? So 30 pounds away from even 210, which would be great. But it's also, that's down for me. I've lost weight, right? 240 is not my high, right? I've been higher. So it's all perspective. And also, by the way, thinking about others, and this is something you always hear, but like just as a reminder to be compassionate to people. The person you see on the street that looks like they weigh 400 pounds, you don't know their story. They might have weighed 500 pounds a year ago, right? They might have lost 100 pounds, and you might be judging them in your mind for their size or their exercise or whatever, but you just don't know somebody's story, right? Just because you see me on the street and I weigh 240, you don't know that 6 months ago I weighed 270, right? And so you look at me and think, oh, there's a fat guy, and I'm still fat, but not as fat as I used to be, right? I'm moving the right direction. So it's just, I guess there's a note there for me of like compassion for people too, right? Because you don't know their story and what they're doing, where they've been.
Sure. Well, and even to take this outside of, because, fitness and health is a visual thing. So when we talk about self-improvement, it's always like kind of one of our topics, one of our examples. But to take it, try to do something other, like if, as a nurse, right, I have patients that a lot of times nurses will say, I can't believe how rude or angry this patient is to us, or, they're just so, such a a-hole, right? To try to keep the language clean and stuff like that. But we don't know where they're coming from as far as their mentality, what they've gone through, either as far as even a I can't think of the word, but basically a mental standpoint of where they're coming from, their spirit and everything. So there's a lot to unpack there as far as we need to treat others in a good way. Now, obviously, we can't let people run over us if they're being rude and stuff like that. We can't just, it's okay for you to treat me that way. But obviously, you got to use some common sense there. But also, we don't know where they're at as far as their journey on their mental health either. So definitely some things to be aware of there. And also, we go back to small little changes that you can do every single day. Every single day are probably better than big splash ones that you can do once Can you do it again? Maybe. Can you do it a third time? Less
Probably
chance.
not.
Are you
Right.
going to do this forever? Probably not.
Yeah.
So that's why, like, even with like intermittent fasting, I talked to a few people about it, and their instant thing is just like, whoa, I could never do that. And I'm like, well, you do it every night. You
Yeah.
fast for
Almost
eight
all of
hours.
us do 12.
Yeah.
You know.
So maybe you could just do 9 hours, and
Yeah.
then 10, and then 11, and it's so funny. I talk to some people that are doing intermittent fasting, and they'll do 5 days, and I'm like, oh, that's impressive. And then someone will talk to me, and I was like, yeah, I haven't eaten for 17 hours, and they drop their jaw, and they're like, you haven't eaten for 17 hours? How are
Yeah.
you not starving
Right.
to death? And I'm like,
Right.
really? There's dudes that are going 10, 15 days without eating, and they're buff and huge. So
Yeah.
my 16
It's
hours
all.
is really
Yeah.
not that impressive. So
Yes. Absolutely.
and
Absolutely.
so perspective is all is very important. So like, say if you were going to try intermittent fasting, I wouldn't say, oh, you know what, every single week I'm not going to eat on Fridays. I'm not going to eat for the entire day on Friday, and
No, that's crazy.
yeah, it's just not sustainable. What I would say is start your timer every single night and see what you can do at first. You don't even have to try. Just see
Just see what you're doing. What's a baseline? What are you able to
what's
do?
your normal fast like, and can you add
Yeah.
an hour to it? Can you delay breakfast, or can you go to 2 meals a day instead of three? Or
Yep.
and can you just, or if you want to stick on 3 meals a day, can you just eliminate the snacks and do 2 6-hour fasts during the day?
Yeah.
Wait 6 hours before lunch and wait 6 hours before dinner. Can you get a 12-hour fast combined? By doing that.
Yeah.
So like
Without snacks in between. Yeah.
smaller improvements there.
Yeah. For sure.
Well, man, it's about time for us to wrap up. Is there anything you want to add? Or?
Well, I was gonna ask if I could add something. Can I add my own little small segment that I want to do, like a 1 minute segment?
Well, it doesn't have to be 1 minute. We're in no rush here, but
Well, yeah. I just this is something I would like to do when I'm on because there's actually something that I've been wanting to share with you, and this is a perfect place to do it because there's a book, a self improvement book that I think you should add to your list that has really, really, I think, changed my life in the last month or two. And it's something that I really think, it's only been a month or two, but it really has stuck with me, and I want to share about it. So this is a book. Have you ever heard of a book called The Four Agreements?
I have not heard of it. Go ahead.
So this is called The Four Agreements. I'm looking at it right now. I have it in front of me. A practical guide to personal freedom. And essentially, the idea here is that there's four things that you sort of commit to when you wake up in the morning every day. You commit to these four things, four ways to just live your life, ways to approach the world that will sort of help you to live a better, more wholesome life. And there's a lot about this book. It's written by Don Miguel Ruiz. It comes from sort of ancient. There was an ancient society called the Toltecs, and this is Toltec wisdom. But these four assumptions are great. I'm going to read them real quick. The first one is to be impeccable with your word. And he doesn't just mean don't lie, although that's obviously part of it, but also understanding that the words that you speak about yourself and about others, they have power. And, so it's about avoiding gossip. It's about avoiding negative self-talk. It's about avoiding putting other people down. So the first one, be impeccable with your word. The second one, don't take anything personally. Nothing that others do is because of you. And that's a really hard thing to do, right? When somebody cuts me off in traffic, I think that they did it to annoy me, or somebody says something about me that offends me. And what Don Miguel Ruiz says is it's actually not about you, it's about them. If they're saying something negative, it's about them. It's not about you. Have the confidence in yourself and who you are. So the third one, don't make assumptions. Don't assume anything. We talked about this with like people's journeys, right? Whether it's physical health, mental health, never making assumptions about what somebody else's intentions were, what they think of you, just trying to avoid assumptions. And the last one, this is improving yourself, right? The last one is always do your best. And that best will change from moment to moment. Your best today may not be what your best is tomorrow. But in every situation and moment, are you trying to always do your best? And he sort of connects that to the other three. There's times when I'm not impeccable with my work. I sometimes slip into gossip. Or there are times when I take something personally. And so he says those are going to happen. But if you're following the fourth agreement to always do your best, then you are trying to reset those four agreements. So I would highly recommend this book to anybody. It's a short read. It's maybe 100 pages, but it is. I wrote those four things on my phone, and I see them every morning when I wake up. Those four agreements. So wanted to share that with you and with our listeners.
When we disconnect here, go ahead and text me that because I'll put it
Yeah.
in the description of the video.
I will. I'll text you the details here, the name of the book and the author. But really, a great book, and I know you've read some too that are good too. It might be a good chance for us to also share with our listeners, just in general, some good text to read, some good self improvement books as well. Because that's part of it too, is just gaining more knowledge, right, about how we improve.
Yeah, and hopefully sharing those in a way that is legal.
Yeah, well, we're not making any money. I think
Yeah.
you can share anything as long as you're not making money off of it.
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and obviously we're citing our sources for the most part.
Yeah, absolutely.
And if we take a one-liner here and there, usually we're taking one-liners that are pretty generally well known, but just applying them to our own lives. And I think that's really our goal, is to take information and apply it to our own lives. That's usually generally commonly open public information.
But once we get 1,000 subscribers and Apple starts sponsoring us, we might have to be more careful. But
and maybe once we have enough listeners, well, I'll have to get a lawyer to kind of review our videos, our content. Well, listeners, please, as you're listening to this, if you notice subscribers, if there's something that's not coming through, like you hear some background noise or you're not hearing my brother's voice, leave a comment and I'll try to adjust my setup here so you can hear it better. And thanks for listening. And Malcolm, thanks for being a faithful celebrity guest. And we'll see if we can, if there's a subscriber that wants to be a guest sometime, maybe send me your resume and we'll see if you're average enough.
Yeah, you send us an average resume, not a big one. Send back an average resume. But yeah, I'm happy to be on anytime, man. Anytime.
It doesn't have to be in color.
Yeah, exactly.
It can just be typed up,
Doesn't have to be fancy paper.
All right. Well, I'll see you guys later. Thanks for joining the show, Malcolm.
Thanks, bro.